Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, our beloved Guru, Paramhansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, humbly we bow at thy feet. Divine Mother, help us to feel your consciousness, that we may charge forward, ever living in your joy, overcoming all obstacles, to feel your love, to share your light, and to return home to thee. Om, peace. Amen. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. All I live eternal friend. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. Let's meditate now for a few minutes. Om. Peace. Amen.
Good evening, everyone. I'm finding myself really looking forward to these every other Friday night, so I'm hoping many of you are feeling the same way. I have to say, and I don't know why, maybe I just didn't have enough time to get ready for it, but I didn't anticipate enjoying the study and the sharing of this particular teaching as much as I am. It's, as I keep saying over and over, it's so deep. It's just so deceptively deep. And I imagine, though I don't have a plan right now to go through these books myself.
Sorry, we forgot to ask Tandava after the meditation.
Oh, is Tandava there? You know what? I preempted Tandava. He's here to sing some music for us, so I apologize. But I know right where I was, and I'll be back in a moment.
Dare to be different, dare to be free, dare to roam far like wind on the sea, fly like a gull, soar high on the air, be strong in your courage when others despair. Never in anger, never in haste, go without pride, be never abased. Freedom is yours, if freedom you give, you all give it freely, in freedom you live. Mountains that stand up tall in the sky tell us no dreaming is ever too high. Dare to climb boldly, brave that high peak, you'll never know failure if bravely you seek. Dare to be different, dare to be free, dare to roam far like wind on the sea, fly like a gull, soar high on the air, be strong in your courage when others despair. Be strong in your courage when others despair.
Thank you, Tandava. I hope you're still there and watching me and knowing that I appreciated that, even though I did forget about you for a moment. Actually, it reminded me when Tandava was singing that song, which is a wonderful song, that I neglected to bring with me tonight, either my little book or a printout. I wanted to read these 2 days that Swamiji had written on discouragement, because it does always intrigue me when he gives 2 days to one of these emotions. But I think I remember from 2 weeks ago, actually, enough of what they were about that I'll be able to go back and share them. But I was just saying that each little day is so rich. There's just so much in each one of these that it's just turned out to be such a joy for me, the time that I spend before these evenings, just sitting with it. Because as I keep saying, there's 1 or 2 sentences. There's not much written about these emotions throughout all of their writing. So it really, it demands a kind of quiet, inward, deeply attuning myself to these teachings to come up with what is it precisely that Swamiji is trying to share with us. So anyway, it's been wonderful for me. I hope it's been wonderful for you. Lakshmi's just letting me know that I can read the readings off of her phone, which I'll do in a couple of minutes. But I wanted to just catch us up. Last week, 2 weeks ago, I spoke a lot about the ego 2 weeks ago. And I spoke sort of very graphically about stories from the Mahabharata and the Gita, and Bhishma, who represents the ego that has this strong hold. And he's been given this boon that he, Bhishma, who represents the ego, does not need to die until he is willing to, until he decides to, if you will, though it's not precisely that, but he's in control. And so we see Bhishma pictured, the image is always of him riddled with arrows, laying on a bed of arrows. I said this 2 weeks ago, but I want us to come sort of up to the present moment. And still he's not dead, not until he decides. And it just is such an extraordinary example of how much a picture can say about how much life can beat us up, how we can, do what Master called, I'm sorry, not agonizing monotony, though it is agonizing monotony, anguishing monotony, where we just keep doing the same thing over and over and over, and we don't get it. And we always think it looks different. I forget where I was just recently. Maybe I was visiting with a friend from Ananda village, and I think it might have been in that conversation, but we were saying how many times we get to a point in life and all of a sudden we see ourselves faced with our own kind of weakness or magnetism towards or indulgence in a quality or something that just draws us negatively out into life in a way. And you can say to yourself, oh, dear Lord, I thought I let go of this years ago. And then you realize the tug that all of that can have on you. And that's really what's happening in that image of Bhishma. It's like, wow, we are really willing to take a lot. And it came into this reading about discouragement because energetically, as long as we are allowing our energy to be magnetically drawn down or out in any way, as long as we're giving into those tendencies of ours that take us away from the divine, away from the light, away from pure love. And there are thousands of them. I have to ask everybody to bear with me right now, because in these last weeks, we're talking about discouragement and the end result of moving away from discouragement is finding courage. And I'm also teaching a class called Courage, Calmness, and Confidence. So of course I'm talking about courage. And the last 2 Sunday services that I gave are all about courage in one way or another. So now I forget when I said what and to whom. But so having said that, if I repeat myself, it's not dementia. It's the meaning of the teachings, but they're just all, somehow they're all right here, which says to me, I always say we teach best what we most need to learn, so there must be something here for me. But there are so many tendencies in us. Master used this beautiful, beautiful phrase, a crowd of tendencies, referring to each of us. And it's just so beautiful how he said that. And I was saying somewhere that when Sanjaya is espousing some wisdom on the battlefield in the Gita, he says to King Duryodhana, he says, the people on our side, meaning the Kauravas, those, we call them downward pulling tendencies, but it's all about the ego. It is. He says they're too numerous to count. It just speaks volumes. You hear, we are really up against it. Life is challenging. It's not a bad thing that it's challenging, because every challenge just allows us, and I do think I said this 2 weeks ago, to kind of flex our muscles. We get stronger. But it's in that getting stronger, in that willingness, in the battle that we're fighting, when we're willing to fight the battle, that we move from being discouraged to being courageous. It's right there. And it turns. It's like holding the strongest magnet imaginable that can only work on all of those tendencies, which of course is the guru, and that's important. That's the magnet, and holding it here and just watching everything, all of those tendencies against their will, without needing to deal with them one by one by one. You just hold to that magnet and you find yourself being transformed. You can no longer feel discouraged. You find yourself feeling courageous. I had an experience with a client of mine just today. I just love how these stories present themselves. But she's in a challenging situation. She's gotten herself into it, of course, with a partner who has been treating her very badly. Excuse me. Excuse me, for a couple of years now. And somehow she's been willing to stay there. I've only been talking to her for a couple of months, but I know the story. And many times I've said to her in the last couple of months, ask yourself, why are you willing to be there? What is there for you? Maybe not even just willing, but drawn, because he's not being physically abusive, but he's just being neglectful, hurtful. I mean, it could just go on and on. But today, somehow, I found the way in. And this is not necessarily a woman who's been living on a spiritual path, but the teachings are not foreign to her. And I talked to her about this battle and about how every one of us has to fight the battle, because she was saying to me, but it's so hard, it's so painful. If I leave, I'll never get over this pain. My heart will break. And I was saying to her, and what? I mean, what? You'll drop dead? I mean, well, I wasn't being cold about it, but we've been round and around. It's like, what if it's painful? What if it's hard? What in life isn't hard? If you want to get to the top of the mountain, it's hard. If you want to learn how to play an instrument really well, it's hard. If you want to study medicine or physics or law or anything, it's hard. That's the nature of life. And it's in those challenges. But I said to her that one option that is not there if we want to grow through these things, is to give up on it. That's not what you do. And on the other side of the challenge is that extraordinary joy, true joy. We know true joy in the nature of a divine quality, which I said to her as well, that deep, true joy of succeeding in having overcome that draw to go in really towards the dark. And as I was speaking, and I said to her, this isn't who you are. You're not this person. You're a shadow of who you were 2 years ago. You came into this bright and loving and generous and calm and positive, and now you're mean and you're bitter and you're scowling. And she looked at herself in the mirror. She was sitting in her car talking to me. And all of a sudden, it just clicked in that it was the truth, that she was feeling so discouraged about everything in life. And when it hit her, that, and I don't mean that what I was saying was the truth, but when she allowed herself to experience her own power, there was a smile that came to her. And I said to her, right there, look at that. You have reclaimed your spiritual inner power. You are beautiful. You are perfect in this moment. Nothing is off center in you. Look in your mirror. And as she looked, it was a smile, but it was the smile of her soul. It was coming from the inside out. It was going from negativity, discouragement, fear, restlessness. I could just go on and on. Disillusionment, everything, to that power, that courage, just unfolding and allowing that innate quality of the soul, courage, to expand again. And it was like, I wish I had known quickly enough how to take a screenshot on FaceTime. It was a perfect and immediate transformation. That's what we're talking about. We are talking about the difference of day and night, light and dark, positive and negative. I'm speaking of them as if they're dual, but we're not. I don't mean that, because we're talking about turning from the darkness, living in the light, uplifting ourselves from negativity and living from that positive place of knowing that everything in life is perfect. No, it's not painless. I don't know why she drew this relationship to herself and many painful things that have happened in it. But in a way, I would say, so what? That's not what matters. All that matters is that we keep moving. We keep raising our energy. That's why the Battle of Kurukshetra speaks so perfectly to discouragement and courage. Because what was Arjuna feeling? Arjuna was feeling the ultimate in discouragement. I'm not doing this fight. He had no heart for it until God himself turns to him and says, yes, you are. Yes, you will fight. You have to fight. Your life depends on it. He was speaking to every one of us. We cannot let ourselves stay discouraged. It's not what we're meant to do. And quite frankly, particularly those of us who are engaged tonight, we've already passed that a long time ago. We don't get to wallow in that very long. It's not even a choice. It's simply not a choice. I was saying in another class recently, and it's so true. There's no joy in that anymore. There's not any peace in it. How long can we listen to ourselves whine or complain or talk about how hard things are? I've watched it in my own life go from weeks to days to hours, and now it's unbearable almost after minutes. You just can't, even sometimes while you're doing it, you're going, oh yeah, this is not gonna work. You know it right in the moment, exactly in the moment. The joy is in the battle. The joy is in the battle to be perfectly well, to be ourselves. Again, to reclaim that spiritual power. In the first day of these readings, Swamiji says that the way to move from discouragement to courage is to support other people to find their own courage. That's not his exact words, but it's close enough. In the second reading, and I'm going to ask Lakshmi to bring it to me. Do you have it, Lakshmi? Because I want to read to you exactly what Swamiji says about it. It's so beautiful, I could paraphrase it, but it's not as good. He says, the secret of overcoming discouragement is not to brood. That's what I wasn't relating to what he said, but it's so obvious. It's just what I was saying. Instead, act. Uplift your heart's feelings. Stand upright. Inhale. And with the inhalation, draw courage upward from, oops, I lost it. Upward from your heart. Just flipped to another whole place in her phone here, interestingly. And with the inhalation, draw courage upward from your heart to your forehead. Then exhale and cast out of yourself all mental weakness and negativity. So this is not, there's so much in that statement that Swamiji's making right here. When he says, stand upright, it's no small thing. I want to say to you that there's a lot of physicality that's brought in when I was not Googling discouragement, but looking it up in what's called the Ananda Library. Something that came up that I did not investigate further, and I'm not going to ask Lakshmi to find it right now. But at one point, Swamiji says in the Raja Yoga book, he says there are even foods, which we'll talk about in the dietary segment under the chapter called magnetism, that there are foods that we can eat. And these, I'm sorry I can't tell you what they are, but because again, I didn't look it up. But foods that we could even eat, because there's so much that Swamiji relates to these physical aspects. Why? Because it's all energy. It's all of these different ways of moving our energy, of getting a hold of it. And again, remember, it's not easy. I just told you the story of this woman, and I told you how strong I was with her today. But I've been meeting with her for months, and I was not that strong until today because I needed to be compassionate and supportive because I know what she's going through. I know what it's like to feel like you love somebody so much that if you can't be with them, you won't be able to breathe. I mean, this is how people feel about their children, never mind in relationships, in adult relationships. But who has not been hurt in a loving relationship? Most people have not hurt aggressively, but felt pain and feel like, that's why we call it a broken heart, because you just literally feel like your heart's gonna break, like you can't bear it. That's what she was afraid of, until I could finally say to her today, of course you can bear it. So when I say, and I said to her, not only of course you can bear it, that's the nature of life. It's in the bearing of it that we keep moving forward. Whatever the it is, it goes from something that's being done to us that's unbearable, that's impossible, to something that has everything in the world to do with us, and we're going to lasso that energy and we're going to transform the energy. And that's precisely what this whole, not chapter, but this reading on discouragement is about. So when Swamiji says, stand up straight, if everybody just tries it, even if you're sitting, because you're probably gotten a little more like this as I speak, and you just sit up straight, it's remarkable what happens. You know, every Sunday, well, pre-pandemic, every Sunday, when we had our service, there's a moment where we do a very short meditation, many of you know. And usually the light bearer who's leading us in that meditation says, now let's take a few minutes to meditate. And most people say, sit up straight, make sure your spine is straight, and you can just feel in yourself and in the whole room, the energy just comes up. Because people were tending to lean back or slouch a little or let their mind wander a little, suddenly it's there. And the spine, where energy needs to be able to flow, is straight. And it does start flowing. And focus your attention at the point between the eyebrow. Swamiji says, inhale, draw energy in the form of prana in from your heart, raise it to your forehead. This is a book for the public, but he's saying to the point between the eyebrow. So we're literally allowing energy to go from here to here. Now, this may sound silly to some people, I don't know. But if you do that, if you just do that, you find more courage. You feel stronger. It's extraordinary what a simple breath can do. Standing up straight, stand up tall. Swami Kriyananda was always somebody who led with his heart. You would meet him, he would be like this, spine straight, heart wide open, not a moment of fear or doubt or discouragement, certainly, in that stance. Never, never. It's pretty remarkable, but it's the truth. So just changing our physical stance can easily help us to go from being discouraged to finding our courage. And you try it next time you're feeling down, and you see what happens when you're walking around like this. Somebody says, how are you? You go, fine, fine. Is that believable? No. But if somebody says to you, how are you? And you say, great, then they believe you. If your voice is up, if your energy's up, if your body is up, it's the truth then. You cannot feel great and be walking around like that. You can't feel great and have that quality in your voice. It's just, they're mutually exclusive. So if you work not on trying to fix the relationship, but just sitting up straight or standing tall, as Swamiji said, straightening your spine, inhaling, and then consciously, as you exhale, let go of, consciously, doubt, fear, discouragement. It's just an exercise you do. But it has to work because those two states cannot exist in the same moment. So Swamiji, of course, knew exactly what he was talking about. And it is a very powerful tool. I'm just going to ask Lakshmi because I saw her on her phone. Did you look up the foods?
Yeah. Well, I looked at the diet section for magnetism. So what specifically?
So Swamiji said there are certain foods that help us be more magnetic. What are the foods, and why are we talking about more magnetic? Because again, remember what I said, magnetism, the way we speak about magnetism, means our soul's longing to find the perfect magnetic force in our lives, which is the guru. So what we want is we want to do everything we can do that's going to allow that energy to flow. And because foods have energy, then again, we won't spend more time. I thought she had easily found them, but it doesn't matter. If there's foods that we can eat, I remember, I mean, for years when I still do it, but I was practicing more medicine. And I would just watch people who were having, I would call them mood disorders, but it's not mood disorders as in the way psychiatry uses that term. That's, of course, a diagnosis, having a mood disorder. But I mean mood disorders like they couldn't stay positive. They didn't feel strong. They were not solution-oriented. They were problem-oriented. Maybe they couldn't find their voice. They were living with an abusive or an alcoholic partner, and they just couldn't find their voice to set limits, have boundaries. And I would just suggest to people that they wear certain colors depending on where it felt like the energy was blocked, the color of that chakra. So if somebody couldn't find their voice, then I would say wear blue, because that's the color of the throat chakra. Let me just look at this for one moment. Okay, this is going to take me too long. I shouldn't be doing this on your time, but I will tell you, because Swamiji lists so many foods, but they're about to soften too strict of a sense of discipline, or to raise mental vitality, or, I mean, there's dozens of them, and I'm sure there's something in there about just generally, although all of that would increase our magnetism, but I won't try and focus in on it now. And just by wearing that color over that chakra, because that's the color of the chakra, the energy, the vibratory rate of that color would draw to them the very qualities that they would need. It's a lot of how sound healing works or color healing works. It's just releasing energy that's blocked in any one of these chakras. All of these things work, and they'll all work to help us without figuring out the problem exactly. Because remember, the problems are too numerous to count. And if the problems are too numerous to count, how are we ever going to solve them all? We're not. But if we find the one thread that lifts them all up, all of these strands up to here, everything starts coming up. So in a way, it's so much more simple than how we live in life usually. So we're having problems with a partner, problems with a child, problems because we can't seem to be successful at work. It can go on, it doesn't matter what it is. It's all of the ways that life can want to come in and discourage us. Our job is to do everything we can do, as Swamiji was saying here, all of the ways that he's saying, change in any way you need to allow energy to flow. And as the most important axiom, maybe on our path, the greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. The greater the flow of energy, the greater the magnetism. So when we allow energy to flow, we are increasing our magnetism, which puts us, in essence, in closer proximity to the magnetism of the Guru, who can then guide us and direct us. The same exact thing happens when we reach out to serve other people. When Swamiji says, if you're discouraged, find ways to help other people find their own courage, to plug into courageousness. How could you do that without rising up energetically, spiritually, to meet them? So when you go to serve somebody else and you're not thinking of yourself, but you're bringing your energy up to give it away in a positive way. You're doing, again, exactly the same thing. All of this is about allowing energy to flow and enhancing our magnetism in an upward direction. There's a place where Swamiji's talking about discouragement and courage, and I don't know how many times he mentions, of course he mentions meditation, because again, same old, same old. I've had a couple of my friends who are not on the path say to me in this kind of, yeah, but in the end, all you say is learn to meditate. Yep, that's it. That's all we need to say, learn to meditate and practice it. But what Swamiji is saying here, and he reminds us, not here in this little reading, but in anything he's written about discouragement, because it's all about energy and it's all about magnetism and it's all about the guru. That really is what it comes down to. And Swamiji says the most important thing that we've been given, the most important tool, the best way to get there is through Kriya Yoga. And it's just simply the truth. Every one of us has access to this type of meditation, this very deep meditative practice that is not a practice that works out here to get us ready. It's not a yoga posture, it's not a breathing exercise, it's not chanting, it's not any of the other techniques we've even been given on this path. The reason for everything we do is to get ready to be initiated into Kriya Yoga, which works directly in our astral spine, to open it up and to help those columns, those channels of energy, to not just open and be free, but to feel that magnetism so centered and so focused that it draws every bit of energy, of our energy, of who we are, into the core of our being. So we remember, we know in a moment who we really are, which are manifestations of divine energy. And I can't speak to you about samadhi yet. I can't speak to you about, whatever words you want to give it, cosmic consciousness, enlightenment. I can't speak to you about that. But I can tell you that the more we move in towards the very core of our being, the more we realize in more moments, minutes of our lives, the essence of who we are. And from that place, we cannot feel discouraged. We can't feel anxious. We can't feel depressed. It doesn't exist there. Master said a very interesting thing. Recently, I read it. Probably, again, I was reading about it. Maybe it was just last week when I was talking about calmness, just a couple of nights ago. I think that's where it was. He said, suffering, let me just get his words for a minute. I was just telling somebody this last night. His words are always so beautiful. I hate it when I have to paraphrase him. But basically, he was saying suffering doesn't really exist in this world. It's got no reality in the world. Suffering is within us. It's not something that exists. It's something we create with an attitude or with our energy being in the wrong direction, or something we even cling to at times. But as he says somewhere else, if you want to be happy, nothing and no one in the world can make you unhappy. And if you want to be unhappy, here it is suffering. Nothing and no one can make you happy. So when you are living more and more in your astral spine, when you have meditated more and more and more, till you begin to find that place where instead of being drawn where you're going by the outside world, there's something at your core that's leading you, and that's what you're following. And it's called intuition, inspiration, God's grace. It's all of that. And when you live in that, then you no longer suffer from this state of discouragement. So everything Swamiji is telling us here says to us, not only practice Kriya Yoga, because anybody's going to pick up this little secrets book. He says, help other people find their courage. Stand up straight. Take a deep breath. Keep your eyes looking upward. Most people, you don't even have to know why. It doesn't matter, because it will work. It will draw the energy where it needs to go. So, these are beautiful, beautiful little lessons. Again, each one, the whole path. Look at this, in 2 weeks, we've gone from thousands of years ago in the Mahabharata to this very moment when we can all be initiated into Kriya, and it's all the same story. It's all the different ways that Divine Mother has manifested to really just take us by our hands and just say to us, come here, sweetie, come home to me. I'm waiting here. And you have that extraordinarily magnificent feeling of being held in Mother's arms. There's nothing like it. And you don't have to suffer anymore. You don't have to fear the line from a song. You won't have to fear anything anymore. God bless you all. I think you're all unmuted now. So if you have any questions, you can just ask them. I'm going to put on my glasses in case anybody has a question. Now I can see you. Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Hello, who's ever saying hi? But hello.
This is Joy.
Hi.
I unmuted myself. Oh, there, okay. This is Joy.
Hi, Joy. Good to see
you.
Yes, it was a beautiful letter. Thank you so much. Yeah, lovely.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you liked it. I Saginash. I hope he's there tonight.
He is. Yes. He's not. He's,
About the throat chakra. As a singer for many, many years, and often as an instrumentalist too, in an ensemble, a band type setting, I have found myself being able to get into the flow. And this is before I came on the path, but I knew about the chakras, and especially the throat chakra, the heart chakra. I would, if I wasn't actually singing at the moment, I could put myself into a meditative state and visualize the color blue. And that would help me just be in communication with the other folks in the band. And occasionally when I've gotten like laryngitis, I think I must have read about this somewhere before, but that laryngitis is also related, of course, to the throat chakra. And it was a sense of not being able to relate to what's going on in my world or one's world. And so I just wanted to speak to that. And then I also wanted to just bring up the Master's thing that he said, which was, if you're feeling down and discouraged, to go into the mirror and hold the sides of your lips up.
lift the corners of your mouth up. Yeah.
Yeah, so you reminded me of that. Thank you so much.
Which also works. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Joy. Yeah. Anybody else? Saginash, you took me away from my gallery view. Hey. Hello, David.
I just wanted to say that I found that this whole trip takes time. It's not something that happens, in a year. It happens in decades. And I was wondering if you could just share how you felt your courage grown over the last few decades that you've been practicing. I mean, we can clearly see, but was it something that just came to you one day and you realized it was happening, or was it that discouragement was less before. That's kind of my experience, is that it's not so much that I had the courage to do it, it's that I just did it and the courage came.
Right. That's beautifully said. Yeah. I think that's the way. First of all, I would say, Sai Ganesh is asking me to repeat it. David's asking me what my thoughts are. He's being very nice and saying, we can see you have courage. How did you do it? But I'm not taking that right now because I'm still, of course, working with it like we all are. But did I just find that courage came, or did you just keep working on it and it happens? Is it a sudden process or a slow process? David mentioned over decades, and I'm not making fun of him, but I would say we all know this is what we work on over many, many, many lifetimes, many lifetimes. And fortunately, we don't lose the progress that we make in any one lifetime. We come back and we've, it's like our soul's been imprinted, our chakras, our astral spine is different. Everything that we succeed at spiritually in any lifetime, we take with us, and we take it with us, and this is true, in the spine. We can make millions and millions and millions of dollars. We leave the dollars. We can have 6 gorgeous children. We leave them. What we don't leave is learning to love better, maybe the success of treating people well, which led us to make money. So it's lifetimes of work. And I think what David is saying is true, and that is you keep making the effort, you keep self-correcting, you commit to it. We're not perfect, but when we see ourselves off, we give ourselves less and less room to misbehave. This is why when Sri Yukteswar said, learn to behave, it's a very profound statement. Doesn't sound that way because we're used to speaking to children that way. Basically, he was speaking to all of his children. But what does that mean exactly? But at least in one way, it means just this. Just keep heading towards truth. And it's painful. I told that story last week when I was, you remember I had the tooth, or not 2 weeks ago, I had that second tooth abscess at the end of 4 months of tests. I was passing them with flying colors. I can't say I was proud of myself. I don't want to be silly here because I wasn't. I was totally aware that it was God's grace. But then I'm sitting in the dentist chair and he tells me I have another abscess and I'm going to need a root canal. And I burst out crying. I mean, if the poor dentist didn't know what to do with himself. And I felt discouraged until later in the day it came to me, no, you are not your moods. This is not who you are. And I was able to leave it almost in an instant. And this is what I keep saying. We just keep making the effort. And then, whether it's with courage, whether it's with anxieties that we felt, whether it's with jealousy, whether it's with competitiveness, I mean, it just can be anything. You just suddenly, it almost just comes to you like, whoa, you know what? I don't feel that anymore. I haven't felt that. Suddenly, I'm so much less afraid in the world. How could that be? I'm just not afraid of anything. What's the worst that can happen? I could die a painful death. It's sort of like, so, and? I mean, there's just nothing. I keep looking this way because, David, you're to my left as I stand here, but I know I have to keep looking at you here. But there's nothing, and I really mean that. The worst it could be is a painful death, whether it's through a heartache or a physical problem, or no matter how much I expand that, I just say to myself, it's okay, I can do that. I can do that. Knowing that God is always there. And when I say I can do that, I don't feel like, oh yeah, I can do that. I feel like, now I know God is really doing it through me. He really is. And when I leave him, I have moments and I feel, whoa, I don't want to be out there alone. But when I'm on and in tune and hearts wide open and God's grace is flowing, there's just nothing to be afraid of. There would be no reason in the world to feel discouraged, certainly not by a root canal. I mean, that was just silly. But it was one of those silly things that taught me an important lesson. Anyway, I pretty much felt it happened so I could share that story with you. So if I was going to be irritated with anybody, I'm irritated with all of you because it was the perfect story. So, you know, we're all working hard on this path. We're all giving it everything we have, and it's absolutely worth it because then you get to that place where you're pretty much fearless and you are calmness and you really do have peace all the time and you feel courageous, and it's just, you just begin to move into it. I'm in the last whatever of my life, year, 10 years, 20, maybe, I doubt it, but it feels like the very end, and I'm thinking, wow, I've got to work really hard and really fast. I genuinely want to make every bit of progress that I can. I wish I had been conscious of this when I was 30. And I was on a path, I was trying, but it doesn't have that immediacy until you realize you don't have much longer. So there you are, yeah. Anybody else? Any other comments? Thank you, David. I always thoroughly enjoy your questions, I have to say. Any other comments or questions from anybody? Okay, well, it's 8 o'clock, and I will look forward to seeing all of you in 2 weeks. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.